Hello, and welcome to the first episode of MindMelt. I'm Jason, and since this is a podcast about marijuana, it's time to melt the mind. For the first podcast, we wanted a basic understanding of the plant we all use. So we went to CW Analytical Labs in Oakland, California. They're a quality assurance testing facility for the medical marijuana industry here in the San Francisco Bay Area. We talked to David Edgerton. He's the senior scientist at CW Analytical, and Emily Richardson, the lab's client relations manager. CW not only tests for potency levels, they look for biological contaminants as well as solvent or pesticide residues. Basically, they are the gatekeepers for this industry. Before labs like CW Analytical, no one really knew how much cannabis they were ingesting, much less whether it was tainted with mold or contaminated with pesticides. Now, because of these labs, most of the products in the industry, or at least the ones here in California, are tested and clearly labeled so we all know what we're getting into. Follow us on Twitter. We are MindMelt1, that's the number 1. And we are on Facebook and Instagram, MindMelt Podcast. And if you want to email us, it's themindmelt@gmail.com. All right, on to the show. Basically, what are cannabinoids?
So cannabinoids are a particular type of compound that are only found in cannabis. So they really belong to the category of compounds known as terpenoids, and they're very similar to some of the other notable terpenes that you might have heard of before, things like limonene and myrcene. The cannabinoids, however, as I said, are only found in cannabis, and that makes them pretty unique. The most notable one, of course, is delta-9 THC, and that's the one that causes the psychoactive effect in most people. This is naturally available within the plant in its acidic form, so it's delta-9 THC acid. Once that gets heated up, it gets decarboxylated and transformed into delta-9 THC, which is the psychoactive form. The other cannabinoids, of which you already mentioned, CBD, cannabidiol, and there's several others such as CBN, cannabinol, is a notable byproduct of THC, and that's a breakdown product. So you can kind of determine almost how well it was stored based on how much CBN is present. Cannabigerol is also present, and that's actually the precursor molecule to THC and CBD. So oftentimes if we find a plant that's harvested early in the process, then we'll see elevated levels of CBG. Several others are also available, and research is uncovering new ones and new therapeutic benefits for these things all the time. Generally speaking, we don't try to advocate one over the other simply because we're not medical doctors. We're trying not to make recommendations like that. But
in terms of cannabinoids, why is it that indicas seem heavier than sativas? Why is it that it's just more of a couch lock if it's the same kind of plant, but it's just a different form? Is it because of the cannabinoids?
Well, typically speaking, indica and sativa, that classification difference is really just based on the appearance of the actual plant itself. So you got to remember, prior to genetic testing, all we had was appearance, and really the classification system was based on that. Indicas tend to be very short, bushy plants, really broad leaves. Sativas tend to be tall, spindly plants, a little bit more spindly anyway. The appearance of the plant really is how we came about these classifications to begin with. Chemically speaking, there's not much difference. Generally, we can say that indicas tend to be a little bit weaker in THC. Everything I've seen so far has said that CBN really contributes to the couch lock more than anything else. And like I said before, that CBN comes about due to overexposure of the dried plant matter to air. So it's not necessarily a THC or a chemical difference that you find between indicas and sativas, so much maybe as the way the plant was treated after the fact.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Now, both of you, use cannabis like I do. What do you prefer? Indicas or sativas, or does it matter?
It honestly depends on the time of day and what I'm going for.
Yeah.
How about you?
I'd say the same. If I'm trying to fall asleep, I want something. I don't mind that couch lock, like a higher CBN kind of an effect. But if I'm trying to go about my day, I want to be able to function and have something that's not going to put me to sleep.
I'm more of a sativa person myself, but now that you've said this, I'm wondering if it's hype. Like sometimes I'm scared of some of the 800 different kinds of Kush plants they have out there, but I do like OG Kush. It's a very good one, and it's not too heavy for me. But Bubba Kush will put me to sleep, and so I'll avoid that usually. But now maybe I won't. Maybe I don't know.
Well, look at the test results. And
That's right. Do you guys list CBN levels or just CBD levels? And
We do. We list 6 cannabinoids for our cannabinoid profiling test. THC, CBD, and CBN are kind of the big 3. And then we also list THCV, as well as CBG and CBC.
Okay. Well, now, what is the difference between the THCA and you said B? THCA and
THCV.
THCV. What are the differences?
Well, THCA is actually the acidic compound that is produced directly in the plant. THCV is an entirely different cannabinoid, so it has a different chemical structure and can also have an acidic form. So you can also have a THCVA, just to confuse matters.
Interesting. And CBN, you said, is more of the couch lock. Now, the other cannabinoids, what do they do?
Well, CBD, of course, has been the main star of the minor cannabinoids, or formerly known as minor cannabinoids. The CBD has been shown to have some very good therapeutic benefits for a wide range of things, and I'd hesitate to really get into all of them here, just because it's the research is still ongoing, and there really is a very wide range of things. It seems to be an immune stimulant, though, in general.
Yeah. Well, and also it's non-psychoactive, so it's effective at providing pain relief. It's anti-inflammatory, but you're not going to get that crazy head high like you will with THC. So a lot of people who are either new to cannabis or need a lot of medicine, but also need to be high functioning throughout the day. CBD is strains that are higher in CBD are a good choice for them, because the psychoactive effect isn't there, but the pain relief and the other benefits, like Dave said, there's many, and more research needs to be done to really tease that out. But it helps a lot of people without making them non-functioning. So.
I find it's, for people who don't use cannabis, I think the fact that there's all these things that it seems to help or regulate, I'm not sure if it makes them mad or just frustrates them, or if they think it's all crap. Because there's, like, alcohol doesn't do it. There's definitely no receptors like that for, pain pills. There are receptors, it does calm down nerves, but it's not like the 100 things from, helping people get hungry to, helping battle, Alzheimer's and breakdown from. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, what do you say to people who are like, come on, man? What do you say to them?
Well, it is a holistic medicine. So, I mean, in the same kind of way that many holistic medicines are. It's because we haven't extracted a single active compound from it to try and treat one particular symptom. You have to kind of regard it as the whole. And it does have a great number of benefits and very few negative effects at all, really. So it has the advantage of, yes, it might cause a psychoactive high, but it's not going to give you the crazy side effects that you see with a lot of other drugs.
Yeah, and it's chemically non-addictive. It's people can become, addicted to really anything. But in terms of as compared to nicotine or some of the other painkillers out there that actually cause a chemical, dependency, right? That's not inherent in cannabis. No. So that's a really positive, aspect of it. And I would say to those people that, are non-believers or that think it's all crap, I think what changes a lot of people's mind is personal experience or seeing firsthand the clear benefits that people get from it. You never would want to wish that on anyone, but if your mom has cancer and the only way she's able to eat is by smoking cannabis, that'll change your mind.
Yeah.
So.
And on the other end of the spectrum, I use it because I have foot pain, I have back pain. I broke my ankle years ago and didn't know it. I thought I just sprained it really bad. So I have arthritis. I have back pain. I have trouble sleeping sometimes, so it helps there. And it also, helps. I'm not like on Prozac or anything like that to regulate my mood. And it seems weird, but people take sleeping pills to sleep. People take pain pills for pain, and I don't do any of that. I only use cannabis, and I think that's actually a benefit, and I think the only reason why it's not looked at as a benefit is because there's a lot of misinformation because of the drug war and a lot of stigma.
That's right.
How do you find do you find that it's still stigmatized for you guys being testing in the lab? Do you still find it's stigmatized with people who aren't in the community?
I think it's gotten a lot more open. Mm-hmm. I have to say I recently visited my family, and first thing that happened was I got off the plane and was asked if I had brought any home. By my grandmother.
To Kentucky. Where he's from, yes.
So it's definitely it's gained a lot of ground over the past couple of years, and I think people's minds are being opened a little bit to the possibilities and the real lack of harmful effects from this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for decades, this country has been bombarded by propaganda and, reefer madness and, these images of the crazy things, cannabis will make you do. And I think now the past couple decades have been kind of reversing that. And showing people, and with the aid of science and clinical trials and laboratories like ours, as well, that, showing people that, look at what this medicine is actually made of, what is cannabis actually, we've found that there's a system in our body that, receives it. There's nothing like that for alcohol,
Right.
And, that's a whole different story, but I think, it's really about changing, attitudes and letting people see what this is truly, what it does for people and what it doesn't do on the same token. So, we still have a ways to go, but I think, every time they, poll, there's a Gallup poll, there's more support than ever. So we just got to keep moving.
We just got to keep moving. So, well, now let's just talk about what not just what's in cannabis, but what else is in cannabis, and what's some of the stuff that you guys find that's not supposed to be there. Let's just start there.
Sure. So, of course, the focus of our laboratory is to try and bring safety to patients. And as a quality assurance lab, we're really dedicated to kind of bringing the same standards that we see in our foods, that we see in our medicines, to the world of cannabis. And to that end, we like to do our microbiological testing, which tests for bacteria, tests for yeast, tests for mold, and can even test for really dangerous bacteria like E. coli and Pseudomonas aeruginosa. We also
Say that again.
Pseudomonas aeruginosa.
That just sounds nasty.
Yeah.
Oh, it is. So these are organisms that will grow on you and will grow inside of your body and can have really devastating effects, especially if you're immunocompromised. So we do standard kind of Petri technique for analyzing for those contaminants, and we also analyze for chemical contaminants as well, using ELISA techniques and GCMS.
I think in the world as a whole, there's this growing trend of producing, our foods organically, and I think that trend is also carried over into cannabis as well. And I think there's a lot of people in this industry that are, health conscious, and they're using cannabis because it's not a pharmaceutical drug and it's not, an opiate. It's more, natural. It is a plant. So I think there's a lot of people in this industry that really care about making it, as clean and safe as possible, and that includes not using pesticides and that sort of thing. So. While they're, and obviously there's some people in the industry that are, just trying to make some money, and maybe they don't necessarily care about who the medicine is ending up with. I wouldn't say that's the majority of cultivators or, edible producers or whatnot. But that risk is definitely there, and we do definitely find, a small portion of flowers and concentrates that are contaminated with chemical, with pesticides and things like that.
Now, do you find inside the medical marijuana industry here in California, do you find that if there are problems with pesticides or something like that, and you report it to the growers, do you find that they correct it now, as opposed to maybe before where they kind of just were like, yeah, whatever you say,
I would say in general, people in this industry are extremely open to making their medicine, their product cleaner and safer. A big area we've seen that in is with microbiological contaminants, because whereas pesticides, you're knowingly putting that on the plant, knowing what it is and the potential harmful effects of it. Whereas things like fungal contaminations or bacterial contaminations, no one's trying to spread bacteria all over their, their crop. And so it can be a shock sometimes when they, when the test results come back and, there's potentially E. coli on there, some of the other harmful bacteria that we find, or, heavy mold or yeast contamination. But once we do find it, and we always tell them we're here to help. We're not just here to give you the test result that say it's dirty and see you later. The whole fact of us being here is to improve the quality of the medicine and to bring awareness to the industry. And Dr. Martin, who's not here, but he's one of our co-founders, he's a microbiologist. So he brings an intimate knowledge of that to the industry and to the cultivators or edible producers or even patient growers that we work with. We've been able to, like I said, just spread awareness and realize that there's certain things that you might be doing, whether it's in the growing process. Typically it's after, during the harvesting and the storage, that can really affect the quality and the cleanliness of the medicine. So just by making small changes that you might not, think about, we can help improve the quality and the safety a lot. And usually we can, just talking with them through their process, we can kind of find a smoking gun or a red flag here and there of, that's, we had a grower one time, this is a good example, that was storing their scissors in olive oil to keep them, you know, from getting sticky. And, you know, there was just all this crazy bacteria all over all of his, you know, all of his product, and everything else in his process was, you know, really clean and tight, and, you know, didn't point to any, you know, easy red flags of, oh, that's causing it. But so we had him dump out his olive oil, and it was just cloudy and, you know, just really nasty, and that's where, you know, it was a breeding ground for bacteria in there. And
who knew?
Yeah, right. That's a little bit more obvious, you know, but things like that people really are trying their best, and they really care, and they really want this to help people, not make them sick, you know. But there's just certain things that, unless you've been trained as a microbiologist, you don't necessarily realize is going to be harmful. So, and the thing about cannabis is, while there's terpenes and other things on the, you know, on the surface that are essentially antimicrobial, the sticky resinous quality of the, you know, the trichomes and that sort of thing really will pick up any bacteria. You know, if you drop that on the floor, it's going to pick up whatever's right around it. So it's just something we have to be careful of and keep in mind when we're, you know, growing and processing and storing cannabis. So.
Now, for people who aren't in the medical marijuana community, and that's, you know, people all over the world, what are something to look for to know if you have some contaminants in your marijuana? I mean, can you see it with the naked eye if it's mold, or can you smell it, or is it a problem that just goes undetected?
Well, there's certainly some things you can look for. If the mold is really bad, you will start to see kind of necrotic dead spots within the bud itself, and most of that is usually kind of cleaned out before going, you know, being vended. On occasion, though, you can also spot things like powdery mildew. Sometimes people will, you know, try and pass those off as trichomes or something like that, but it's usually fairly apparent. It's a white dust, and it kind of covers very evenly. You can also spot. Let's see what else.
Well, mites. I mean,
yeah,
in terms
really,
of bugs and that sort of thing.
Insect infestations are usually pretty easy to spot.
Now, if you did get some mold or some yeast on there and you did ingest it, is it super harmful, or is most of that combusted in the flame, or you know, what does that mean? I'm sure I've smoked moldy weed in my life, well, at least once.
Oh yeah. If you're a healthy young adult, and you appear to be, then the harm is probably relatively small. You might get some bad diarrhea if it has, you know, bacterial contamination in particular.
That's always fun.
Yeah.
But you know, in terms of the mold, you know, it can cause colds to linger, or you know, coughing and irritation and that sort of thing.
Yeah. What if you have asthma or something like that?
Yeah, that's
you're
definitely...
vaporizing it. Does it kill it, or does it go right into your lungs? Maybe. I mean, or don't speculate if you don't know.
Yeah.
Well, some types of mold will certainly grow in your lungs. Aspergillus in particular is a really nasty one, and that can lead to aspergillosis, which will basically cloud up your lungs with mold spores.
Yeah.
That sounds horrible.
Yeah.
It's especially horrible, again, if you're a very sick patient. If you're immunocompromised, then it can be pretty devastating.
Yeah. So. But, you know, again, constant exposure to mold and other fungal or even bacterial contaminants is not ideal for anyone, healthy or immunocompromised. So, like we said, it's more about raising awareness and the fact that you can prevent this kind of thing, and you know, there are ways to work with product that is moldy or bacterially contaminated to make it safer, you know, to consume. So, you know, it's bound to happen. You know, mold is everywhere. There's spores everywhere, and you know, and our testing even allows for some of that. You know, it's there are, you know, considered safe levels, low levels to be present, because, you know, as we walk around outside, you're inhaling spores with mold and the bacteria and that sort of thing. So it's just keeping it down to a level that's not going to have adverse effects and, harm you.
So I guess smell your weed for things other than the smell of the weed.
That's right.
I guess.
Yeah.
That's right. And where it really comes into play is when edibles are being made out of these products.
That was actually going to be bringing me to my next question about edibles. So why don't we start there with contaminants of edibles?
That's right. So a lot of edible manufacturers have really kind of seen the light and have really gotten religion about taking their quality assurance and internalizing it and making it a full process where they check every batch and where they're using safe handling techniques on site. On the other hand, a lot of edible manufacturers that are just starting haven't been there yet and are still kind of educating themselves. And that's a lot of what we do, is have conversations with them and make sure that they're keeping their kitchens kind of clean and up to safe handling standards. To that end, we like to check every batch and make sure that it's cleared of any kind of microbiological contaminants before it goes out to the patient.
Just as any food that you'd buy in the grocery store, those foods undergo the same sort of testing and quality assurance processes. And the trouble is that as someone who's making cannabis-infused food products, most of them don't have access to, commercial kitchen space, or if they do, and whoever owns the kitchen finds out what they're doing, they're kicked out, sort of thing. So, it's you kind of end up between a rock and a hard place there. If you're forced into using a home kitchen, that doesn't mean you can't produce safe, clean products. But having a dog running around or a cat running around is obviously, that's not conducive to that. But there are ways that you can. Everyone should undergo some sort of, safe food service certification process. It's, they're available to the public. You can come talk to us. We have a lot of experience with that sort of thing. It's just important to remember that while it's cannabis, it's also a food. And they should be subjected to the same sort of standards that food in our grocery stores are subjected to, if not more stringent, because a lot of people in this industry that are using these products are immunocompromised. So we don't, the potential for E. coli contaminations and things like that is a relevant concern. So.
All right. Now, why would you say, now that with edibles, since you see a lot of them here in the medical marijuana community, there's two things I've noticed. One is they're getting really, really strong. It's like
arms race.
It's like an arms race. 500 milligrams, 1,000 milligrams, and it's like you eat a crumb and you're done for the day.
Yeah.
And I personally think that's, it's an arms race, but I personally think that it's a little bit irresponsible, because I think you're trying to, I don't know, I think it can do a lot more detriment to the consumer.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel seeing this stuff and knowing that, sometimes if someone eats an edible for the first time, 10 milligrams of THC might send them to the moon, or someone like me, I can barely handle 100, that was a heck of a ride.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, I think a lot of edible producers will tell you that they were driven to produce stronger products by the market and by the patients they serve. We work with a couple, big chocolate producers, and they started out with a 60 milligram, product, and ended up, you know, having to make stronger, double or triple that strength because people were asking for it. People were, you know, patients were saying, I need more, I want more, I don't want to have to eat as much chocolate or whatever the product is, you know. I think in a lot of cases, they weren't even planning on making it that strong, and they were just kind of, they were asked and asked and asked to. So really more important than anything is that patients have the information to make the right dosing decision for themselves. It's perfectly fine to have a product out there that's 1,000 milligrams because some people need that and want that, and it's just important that it's labeled properly, that there's, you know, that that it's easily legible, that, you know, the number of milligrams, and having the number of milligrams on there in the first place. It's more common now, but even, you know, a few years ago, things were mostly labeled as 20x, 10 doses, triple fire, you know, triple X kind of things, and those don't really mean anything.
And now they use milligrams, which is, it's almost like a proofing, like with
right.
alcohol, you know, and there are 120 proof bourbons. There's 151 proof rums.
Yeah.
Not everyone has those. Most
No.
people will have a glass of wine.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. It's the same idea, and by having that information on there, it allows, like I said, it allows patients to make their own decisions about what's right for them. You know, we always recommend, and we recommend that producers put, you know, kind of a disclaimer on their products. You know, please start with a, you know, however they're, you know, dividing up their product, whether it's, you know, into a bar piece, or, you know, please eat less than a fourth of this, or, you know, if it's your first time kind of thing. But having that numerical objective value on there is really important because a dose is different to everyone. And we get asked all the time, you know, what is a dose? Well, you know, some people will say a good starting dose is maybe 15 or 20 or 30 milligrams, but to some people 30 milligrams is way too much, you know, and to some people it's not enough whatsoever. So really, you know, if it's your first time, we always recommend you start small as possible, and work your way up until you find what works for you. But in terms of the labeling, it really needs to be clear about and consistent. You know, getting it tested one time is usually not sufficient to know, truly knowing about your product and making sure that it is what that label says every single time. So.
Exactly. All right, now, why is it? And maybe you do know this or not, but I know edibles, they pass through your liver, and that somehow makes it stronger sometimes. If you smoke 30 milligrams or inhale 30 milligrams, you're going to have a different high than if you eat 30 milligrams. Do you know why that is at all?
Sure. So as you said, it passes through the liver, and that results in 100% absorption. If you think about when you smoke something, a lot of that is lost. You know, it might have 30 milligrams in the bud that you placed in the bowl, but you're probably gonna lose about 75% of that just due to side smoke and things like that.
What if you vaporize it? Is it the same thing?
Even vaporization will result in an incomplete decarboxylation and vaporization process. You're still gonna miss out on some of it.
You're losing some to heat, chemical reactions, right?
That's right. And of course, during the production of an edible, that process, that decarboxylation process, takes place before it's put into the edible. So that loss is still present. It's just, we test it after the loss has already taken place, and then we can tell you exactly how many milligrams you're going to ingest. Also, of course, with edibles, as you said, it gets processed in the liver, and then it turns into 11-hydroxy THC, which is said to be a more psychoactive chemical than just THC by itself.
And it's also why it maybe lasts longer. You know, I've had that. You know, I ate a half of a chocolate bar at a baseball game, and hours later, man, I was, you know, after the game was over, I was still high.
Yeah.
And I just had to lay down after a while.
Yeah.
But that's it. I didn't die. I didn't throw up. I didn't pass out. Just had to lay down.
Well, as with many drugs, you're talking about passing through the blood-brain barrier and getting there from respiration is a lot quicker than it is getting there through eating something.
Right.
So it's that you can also do kind of sublingual drops of THC, something like that. That'll be faster as well because it's going directly through your mucous membranes.
So you're talking about tinctures and things like that.
That's right.
But you still get 100% of it because it's absorbed into your body and passes through your liver.
That's true. Yes, and interesting thing about it, that is, if you do take a tincture and just swallow it directly, it will take longer to set in than if you kind of like let it coat your mouth and be absorbed through your mouth itself. Mm-hmm. So you can kind of regulate that way as well.
That's interesting. So, all right. Well, now let's talk about some of the testing results. And in the community, there is some false high reports, or it seems like THC keeps getting higher and higher. It like some places it's over 35%, and it seems like that's not possible. I mean, you're going to run out of room.
Yeah.
There's only so much place for things. Right.
So much, right.
Right. I mean, there are hashes that some basic cold water press hash that are like 35%. And that's that's hash.
Right.
And so, how is a consumer supposed to know when someone says, "Oh, this is 35% THC"?
Well, so right now there are no real standards or regulations as to how to test cannabis. Because it's been an outlawed product for so long, we're now stuck in the position of kind of regulating ourselves. And to that end, we've joined up with a organization called the ACCL, which is, I guess now it's
formerly the Association of California Cannabis Laboratories, and now we've actually expanded membership to the entire U.S. And there's so many laboratories that were interested in joining that we've decided to just welcome everyone with open arms. But the whole, Dr. Martin, who's our co-founder, helped kind of spearhead this organization with the realization that we first of all need to come together as laboratories in this industry, rather than just competitors, be colleagues, and be able to sit around a table and talk about standards for ourselves, and making sure that no matter where a patient or a dispensary goes, they're going to be getting accurate results because we're working together, and if there's labs that run into issues, they know that they can always call another member lab and get help.
And probably one of the most important things we do with the ACCL is we engage in ring testing. Mm-hmm. So we've kind of internalized our own quality assurance as well there, and taken set extracted samples and standards that we send out to other labs and get results back, and make sure that everybody's kind of on the same page when reporting these cannabinoid values. We like to encourage every patient to kind of look for lab results that come from an ACCL member lab. Mm-hmm. And we like to think that each one of those is going to be fairly standardized within that community of laboratories. Mm-hmm. As for non-members, we can't necessarily say anything to their methods or how they're calculating. Because you do have that acidic component, and there are some calculational losses as well as very real losses that occur.
So you're saying this is all bad math? No, I'm making a joke. Like some of these high results are the result of improper math or a different method of doing things.
It certainly has been the case in the past, and it certainly can be the case. Yes. We're
not naming any names, but
no.
what it's similar to statistical studies. If the methodology is wrong, then it's going to mess up the results, and it's kind of the same thing.
Indeed, yes.